It's not.
I thought it was chilly last
Chilly
week.
last week.
Really?
Yeah, he was
I was too.
I don't remember it being cold.
Yeah, it was cold.
That's old age setting in your memory.
Yeah. Oh, that's gone. Forget that. We do. Tell them back to it. It's had an order in my hand. Put it down somewhere. I
I do
walked
that all the
back
time.
and forth
I
through
do
this
that all the
plant
time. I do it all the
like
time.
3 times.
I do it with my phone.
I do it all
Never
the time.
found it.
Good. I call the Norton City Council regular council meeting for Monday, January 27th, 2020 to order. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Present.
Mr. McClone?
Here.
Mr. Carratt?
Here.
Mr. Towsley?
Here.
Ms. Whipke?
Here.
Mr. Pelot?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here. Communications from the public. When I call your name, please come forward, state your name, your address, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Cassie Jacobson.
Hi. Cassie Jacobson. I live at 5036 Worcester Road West here in Norton. And I'm here in regards to the house next door. I believe the address is 5026 Worcester Road West. In regards to the rezoning. And I just, again, here to express my concerns in regards to, my family's safety if it is rezoned. I have a lot of concerns in that aspect. I am really hoping that it goes to where it is turned down or voted no. The house, yes, it could use a lot of work. The owner, I feel, he purchased the house to fix it up and to resell it. If he feels that he cannot make the money back, I think that that's just a loss, and should just be as so. Keep it as residential. He can sell it. Somebody will buy it. Somebody will put the TLC it needs to, make it. It's livable. So I don't see any reason to change it to possibly become another vacant property or a vacant business. I think there's plenty of that in the city of Norton. As people have said before previously, that is a residential side. I know I do not stand alone in that aspect. I'd like to see it stay residential. It does have a large property. I have a double lot. I believe that lot is double. I know it's a larger yard than mine. I have a lot of nieces and nephews. My daughter, she's 11. Her friends come over. I have nieces and nephews that are 2 years old and up. And we do a lot in the summertime. We are outside all the time. I have a dog, so the kids are constantly playing outside, sports. We practice sports. We're very active, and I just recently purchased my house 3 years ago, and it was a foreclosure as well. It needed some work, but for my family, it was a perfect fit. It was, on a cheaper budget. I was able to fix it up. I'm still in the process, making it my home, my family's home. I love living in Norton. I came from Doylestown area, so A lot of people, Doylestown's a smaller community, but I feel very safe. I love Norton. My daughter loves the schools, and she's active in sports in Norton. And I just feel that the owner has other options besides trying to rezone it for more money. The house is definitely livable, can be fixed up. There's people, he has tenants living there now. I see no reason to change our little neighborhood and our little side of the world. And again, there's plenty of other vacant homes that are zoned commercial or light commercial, just a block down the road on the opposite side. I know that property has 2 houses and 3.5 acres, and it has been vacant for years before I even moved to Norton. So I think that he should just in turn take it as a loss, as many homeowners do when they purchase a house. I also think that if it is rezoned, it sends a bad message. If I were to 5 years down the road decide to sell my house, if I don't feel that I'm able to get the money out that I want or I think I deserve, should I come back and try to rezone it so I can sell it for more and try to put a business on there? I think it would be a chain of effect, and I think that side should definitely stay residential for kids, families to grow. I know when the house was up for auction, I think it was, when it was vacant before he purchased it, I had seen several families coming and looking at that property, and I still know a few people that are interested in purchasing that house when he goes to sell it. So it's not a loss as a home. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole, reports from standing committees. Letter A, boards and commissions appointments. Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I'm right, I've already moved this to the agenda tonight on our last committee meeting. I think we put them all in one resolution now. I don't have to repeat everyone's appointment, right?
No.
I just got to make the change.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I would motion that put the amendment, it's not even amended, the new resolution to the
Okay,
agenda.
okay. So we combined them all to one resolution 15, and the change we have is Andrew Mullins is going to be reappointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals instead of Sandy Crescent. We'll be taking Sandy Crescent off the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Just to clarify, last year we reappointed Sandy for a 3-year term. There was some confusion about who was appointed to complete a term, and so we knew one of the positions were up. We had Sandy on the list. Sandy's not on the list. She's actually good for 2 more years. Mr. Mullins is the person that is up for reappointment, so we just inserted his name for reappointment.
Okay, thank you, Robert. And with that, I'm going to add that to make that change for tonight's agenda.
Is that a motion to amend that? Is that
I think just to place, it's not been introduced yet, so just to
Okay.
just to place on the agenda. No
Gotcha.
amendment.
Just place on the agenda.
Place on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not waiving readings on this,
No,
correct?
for 3 full readings.
So we are moving it to the agenda.
You're moving into the
All
agenda
right,
for
so
the
I
first
need
reading.
I need a second
I'll
for
second
that
that.
motion. Okay.
Now, are we moving it to the agenda if it's already been moved to the agenda, or are we just
Well,
changing
it's a new
what was-
resolution, and it's not really an amendment because it's it's not the
Complete
resolution you
change.
moved last week. So I would just move this.
What he
this
did was,
resolution.
we had like 10 resolutions, we made it
Right.
into one.
Made it all in.
We just used the first one, 15, and eliminated all the rest as
Yes.
far as boards and commissions goes.
Exactly.
I'll second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. I think originally Mr. Karen
I'm
seconded.
sorry, was that
Yeah, you did.
And
personnel? No, that would be more appropriate for him to second
It's
that.
okay, we're in committee of the whole, so anybody can second it, so we're good. Will clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter B, easement agreement. Crawford, Mr. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, the easement agreement, this is just doing the same pretty much as we did last week with the other easement, and this is one that needs to be moved, I think, with haste so we can get the work done. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is the other part, the Crawford property. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, I move that we adopt, I move the ordinance number 17-2020 to tonight's agenda with emergency language.
I'll second.
Motion is second to add ordinance number 17, 2020 to tonight's agenda. Further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Consideration of minutes. The minutes of the regular council meeting of January 13th, 2020. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those? They will be accepted as submitted. The minutes of the committee work session of January 21st, 2020. Any deletions, corrections, or additions to those? They will also be accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mayor Zita.
Thank you. Just want to announce that as we've done in the past, last couple of years, we've been asked to consider joining city and county leaders across the country in officially recognizing January 26th through February 1st as School Choice Week here in Norton. And I have a proclamation that I'd like to read just to do so. It just says here, a proclamation commemorating Norton's School Choice Week, whereas all children in Norton should have access to the highest quality education possible, whereas Norton recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Norton to be successful adults. And whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Norton, and whereas Norton is a home of a multitude of excellent education options from which parents can choose for their children, and whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas our area has high-quality teaching professionals who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Mike Zita, Mayor of the City of Norton, do hereby proclaim January 26th through February 1st, 2020, as Norton School Choice Week, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Norton to be fixed on this 26th day of January 2020. And so I have it set up.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler.
Just a couple of items. Mr. Markey has instructed me to keep it short. This year, we're looking for some summer help. Last year, we only had 2. So anybody who knows someone that is looking for maybe a summer job, we prefer them to be 18 and older. But if they come in and make application, Mr. Hess would be the service department manager, would be happy to meet with them to discuss the opportunity. The Eastern Road water line construction itself is complete. They have testing done to Hametown. We need to get that ordinance to you, but I can't until the construction's complete. But we do have Circle K who's going to connect based on what our estimates. Now, again, those are estimates, not until council establishes the fee, and I've made that clear. But because of their water situation, they need to connect. They've run out of water. For those who don't know, they truck water in a tanker. They use a cistern, and often they run out of water, and then they have to shut down their restroom and food facilities. So we're trying to keep them in business and assist them. We've had a couple questions about new construction. In the Norton Codified Ordinances, Section 1024.03, new sidewalks are required for new construction. And for some reason, in the past, no one has adhered to that statute. We have Ron created a line item in a fund we currently have, and if the new construction owner decides not to build a sidewalk, they can put money in escrow equal to the amount of money plus a slight increase for what it would cost us to put in those sidewalks. I know it's somewhat of a point of contention on a building because this gentleman says it's never been done before, but we really should be adhering to that. We have a couple new houses going in. While there's not sidewalks around them, like on Eastern Road, the ordinance is pretty clear. It states that they should either put sidewalks in or we could put the money in escrow. And then we had intended to bid Medina Line out this week. It's the contract has to be approved by ODOT before it's out for bid. So once we receive ODOT approval for Medina Line, it'll go to bid, and then we will prepare our municipal roads for bidding. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Messner?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Before you move on, I want to ask Mr. Fowler. So I want to make certain I have this in my head, since I was the person that they called about that sidewalk thing. Are we saying that from now on, no matter where the person builds a home, he will be required to put in a sidewalk? I don't understand the difference in being required to put in a sidewalk or putting up the $8,000 or whatever it is for the cost of a sidewalk in escrow. Are you saying?
The escrow fund is strictly for sidewalk construction. Mm-hmm. So one of the arguments people are making, well, there's no sidewalk around, so why do I have to build one? Okay, but the ordinance doesn't say that. But what we're saying is, and Justin and the mayor and I had this conversation last week, is meanwhile they may not have sidewalk. If they don't want to build it themselves, they can put that money in escrow, and we, when we build the sidewalk, would have the money to do their portion of that sidewalk. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure that, not that my opinion is going to mean a lot, but I'm not sure I agree with that procedure. I want to see sidewalks throughout the entire city, no doubt about it. I'd love to see them. But I'm not sure that I agree with holding up the building of a home. Some people, I don't know about the person that called me, but some people just are on a real tight budget, and if you tell them they need to put $8,000 in a escrow account to cover a sidewalk that may or may not be built in the near future.
Well, their option is to build the sidewalk. They have the option to build the sidewalk, but this person does not want to build the sidewalk. That's the problem we're running into. And if you are saying, I don't want to build a sidewalk, this is your option. It's either A or B.
Or change the law.
Well, I wouldn't change the law. I think we should leave the sidewalk law in. I'm just saying that, to use the argument that, especially this property that's adjacent to a public park, I have a hard time saying that this isn't one that we want to stick to it on. I wanted him to build the sidewalk. He is not inclined to build the sidewalk, so we gave him another option.
And that would be on Carl, correct?
Yes.
It wouldn't be on the side street. It would be.
No,
on
Carl. Well, it's a corner lot, so the engineer says it has to go on both sides of the. That's why it's so much on a corner lot.
I read the code that you sent me, and the way that reads doesn't say that, does it? I think it says one side of the street or the other, so it would be the address side of the person's home that they would have to build the sidewalk on. Isn't that right? maybe they'd have to build it, if you're a corner lot, maybe your address applies to both streets. I don't think so. But wouldn't they only have to build a sidewalk on the one side? And not only that, the only thing I'm asking about this, Robert, is I don't care. It's not about that specific sidewalk. We've got a lot of people now that are moving into Norton because of a lot of businesses that we're getting. And I understand we had all these projects, housing projects that built new homes. We had them build sidewalks, and which is the correct thing to have done. And all of this time, we've got all these other homes that might have been built or were built. Just for an example, up along Hametown Road there's some nice homes up there. And we did not require them to build sidewalks. And matter of fact, I don't know of any home that's been required to build a sidewalk since that ordinance was passed. That is that far away from. I don't think there's a sidewalk within. The school was the closest sidewalk to that particular thing, and unless we're planning on, I told the people when they called me about this today, I told them that it possibly could be because that we're maybe soon, I hope, going to put sewer and water down that street. And it would make sense to if you're going to build a sidewalk, to build it after the sewer and water was put in. And maybe that's why the administration wanted to have that money put into escrow to have them put the sidewalk in after the sewer and water was in.
That's one reason, correct.
Yeah,
but it's also a fact that we just felt we could maybe have a little bit larger project, which we get a better economy of scale, and that maybe we put sidewalks on all the street versus just having someone who was not happy about putting the sidewalk in, just essentially get away with building a home without putting a sidewalk. So the alternative was he didn't want to build a sidewalk at all because he's saying there's not another sidewalk there. So this was a compromise, so to speak, for him to not have to put the sidewalk there and for us to have that money longer term for us to build those sidewalks in that neighborhood.
Well, if he chose to build the sidewalk, what's going to happen if he chose to build the sidewalk now instead of the escrow amount? What's going to happen when the sewer and water comes through there? How's that going to affect his sidewalk?
The water plans haven't been.
I
They haven't been designed to tell you where they would go, so I can't answer that question right now. I think it's a 30-foot right-of-way. We might be able to get both in the right-of-way. So if that's the case, then it wouldn't matter. I don't. Typically, we're going to try to keep the water line out of the street because of the Barberton standard that requires us to put cast iron in under pavement. Depending on whether or not we could fit the sewer in, if and when we were to do that, we would take all that into consideration when we're building the water line. So I don't know that I can answer that question because it hasn't even been surveyed yet.
Well, that was just a side thought. That's not the end of the world. I just wondered about it. But the reason mainly is what I'm trying to get at is, are we, as of now, today, from now on, anybody who builds a home in Norton, they're going to be required to put in a sidewalk?
Or put money forth in escrow. Either or.
Is that for certain?
Yes.
It's a law.
I mean,
Right.
we have not enforced it up till now.
We had this discussion, Mr. Braven and I've had this discussion. All commercial construction that's gone on since I've been here has required it.
That's right.
The problem is the engineer prior did not and didn't enforce that law because he didn't feel it was appropriate when you build on Eastern Road or build on Hametown. And that really set us back because if we had a fund where we could put sidewalks in, if they build 10 new houses on a street, we could put a sidewalk in and then it's funded. And it's not us funding that. It's actually the people that built the homes who should have funded it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem at all with the sidewalks. I just want to make certain that the people that's building that home isn't the only person in the next 10 years that has to put a sidewalk in as a residence. So I can go back to them and tell them.
But his problem was, Mr. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but his problem was he didn't want to build a sidewalk because there were no other sidewalks in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And so I said, okay, this is your alternative.
Mr. Fowler, you quoted an ordinance number or a code number. Could you repeat that for us?
It's 1024.03.
Thank you. I'm sure a few of us will get some questions about that this week.
Well, that's all I've got on it. As long as it's an absolute certainty that everybody else that builds a home from now on, I agree that it should have been enforced since 2004.
Right.
But it wasn't. And if we're going to start enforcing it today, I want to make certain that this fella doesn't feel left out when the next guy.
And I can assure you, there's a house that's planned on Eastern that Josh and I just spoke
Right.
about today. He's required to do the same.
Good, that's fine.
They're all required to do the same because that's the only way I can only way I can see interpreting that ordinance. If you want to argue and not put them in, then this is an alternative that we accepted.
Robert, what about the one on Mount Vernon Boulevard?
He will be required.
Okay.
Josh and I are working through that.
Okay.
Am I hearing right, this ordinance passed in 2004?
Yes.
You are correct. I will forward everyone the ordinance. I will forward it. I can forward it to you. You should have it before you leave tonight.
Great, thank you.
Where were we? Mr. Markey.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. No public hearings tonight. Introduction of new legislation. Ordinance number 13, 2020. Mr. Tousley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 13, 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2020 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $30,818 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. First reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 14, 2020. Mr. Tousley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I have this one read, I just want to clarify that there's a price difference of $7,000 between these two vehicles, and that is simply the difference in trade-in values between one purchase and the other. With that, I offer ordinance number 14, 2020 for its first reading, and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2020 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $23,818 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. First reading only.
Thank you, Mr. Tousley. Resolution number 15, 2020. Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution number 15, 2020 for its first reading. Ask the clerk to read it, please.
A resolution confirming the appointment and reappointment of various individuals to various boards and commissions in the city and declaring an emergency.
First reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 16, 2020. Mr. Carent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 16, 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an easement agreement and declaring an emergency.
As discussed earlier, we'd like to waive the second and third readings and bring to a vote tonight. I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of ordinance 16, 2020. Is there any discussion regarding waiver? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Carent?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to move for motion 16, 2020.
I'll second. That's a motion to adopt ordinance number 16, 2020.
Sorry.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion regarding adoption? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Carent?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 17, 2020. Mr. Carent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Similar to number 16, I offer ordinance number 17, 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an easement agreement and declaring an emergency.
Okay, and at this time, we'd like to make a motion to waive the second and third readings and bring to a vote tonight.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of ordinance number 17, 2020. Any discussion regarding waiver? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Carent?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 17, 2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 17, 2020. Further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 18, 2020. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I introduce ordinance 18, 2020 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a New Holland model Power Star PS75 tractor and equipment for the service department at a cost not to exceed $77,065.
It's first reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 19, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, I'd like to offer ordinance 19, 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 4604712 in the city from a B1 district to an R1 district.
And that's for first reading only tonight?
Yes,
Okay.
first reading only.
Ordinance number 20, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, I'd like to offer ordinance 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel numbers 46-08000, 46-08001, 46-08002, 46-04438, 46-04439, 46-03581, 46-02627, 46-08436, 46-08662, and 46-03582 in the city from an R1 district to an I1 district.
Thank you. First reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 21, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, I'd like to offer ordinance 21, 2020, first reading. Please have the clerk to read it.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 46-02907 in the city from an R3 RPC district to an I1 district.
First reading only. Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance number 22, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, I'd like to offer ordinance 22, 2020 for its first reading.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 46-04174 in the city from an R1 district to a B2 district.
Yes, just for the benefit of the people that's here that speaking on this, this has to go through the full three readings. So this will be for the first reading only on that.
All right, thank you. Introduction of prior legislation, amended ordinance number 136, 2019. Mr. Pelot.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer amended ordinance 136, 2019 for its second reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance establishing a benefit charge for water and sewer in accordance with the proceedings related to the Cleveland Maslin Road Water and Sanitary Sewer Extension Project and declaring an emergency.
Second reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 1, 2020 falls to me. I offer ordinance number 1, 2020 for its second reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of donated land by David W. Bramley to the city of Norton and declaring an emergency.
First or second reading only on that. Resolution number 3, 2020. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution 3, 2020 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
A resolution authorizing the submission of an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for financial assistance through the State Capital Improvement Program and the Local Transportation Improvement Program for 4 projects in the city of Norton and committing to providing funding for the local share of each project and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is for making 4 separate improvements within the city, and we're going out to get the financial assistance. This second reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 5, 2020. Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 5, 2020 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend the chapter 258.04 holidays of the codified ordinances of the city.
Second reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 6, 2020. Mr. Carratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 6, 2020 for a second reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance establishing Section 618.16 of the codified ordinances of the City of Norton, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
And was that referring to the dogs in the park? Is that what that
Yes.
ordinance was? Okay. Just want to make sure and clarify it because it doesn't say in the title. For, second reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 7, 2020, Mr. Pilat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer ordinance 7, 2020 for its second reading. And ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend Sections 1040.02C and 1040.02E of the codified ordinances of the City of Norton, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Second reading only.
Thank you. Public service announcements. Mayor Zita.
I have no public service announcements this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
What time is it?
7:36.
I'm amazed. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Oh, it's just...
I should have slowed down.
Good point, yeah.